Thanks, John. Thank you to everybody for having me and giving up your lunch hour, and I appreciate it. I hope I'll make it worth your while. I also hope everybody's over 18. Going to be talking about the GameChangers, film about Grand Theft Auto. You might have seen it. For those who didn't, I'm just going to play you this quickly.
We sold 1 million units in one day.
The British genius behind the most lucrative video game ever.
This is beyond what film can do. We're going to create the first truly adaptable hero.
Versus the man on a moral mission.
These recent revelations demonstrate what little regard these Brits have for the welfare of our children.
The battle over Grand Theft Auto, the fastest selling entertainment title in history. Daniel Radcliffe, Bill Paxton, The GameChangers on BBC Two and BBC Two HD.
So that's me. It wasn't all just me, there were other people too. And it was, that is a factual drama. It's a 90-minute film for television. It's produced from the BBC's Factual department. That's where I work. I'm a development producer within Factual. I've been at the BBC since March 2013. And my job is, I'm the only person in the department who has a factual and a drama background. My job is to find ideas and help get those ideas over the line, get them commissioned. That's the development part. When they get developed, when they get commissioned, I then move into production. And I'm going to talk a bit about both those roles today. So that show, as I say, comes from the Factual department. Within that department we have half a dozen genres: history, science, natural history, arts, business and others too. And we are the people that make the BBC's documentaries. Documentaries, half an hour or an hour. We all know what's in documentaries. They can include head-to-head interviews, archive, all the usual stuff, all the stuff that you guys are doing yourselves here at Westminster, I'm sure. We're not doing anything different really. We are finding it's the same techniques, it's the same research information, it's the same factual skills. We're just telling, and it's the same story. And all of this that we're talking about today is about the story. We just tell the story in a slightly different way. Documentaries in the BBC have a budget for an hour of around about 100 to 200,000 pounds. They might get more money from elsewhere. Good documentaries might be for £500,000 per hour. This show has a budget of £2 million for its 90 minutes, and that's at the lower end of factual drama. This budget and this show comes from Factual. If it came from the BBC's drama department, it would have a budget quite a bit bigger than that. So these shows, produced by the BBC and by others, are the biggest factual shows in the world in terms of the budget and scale and ambition, which is why we get people like Bill Paxton, Daniel Radcliffe, and the previous show was William Hurt. And these people want to work on those shows not for the money, because there isn't a lot of it being the BBC, but they want to work on those shows because they like the story and they're doing something. In a documentary, as I say, you know the techniques involved, you do them yourself. Maybe if there's a bit of extra cash, what would you spend the extra cash on? Well, you can maybe do some reconstruction. Interiors, tight shots, things that don't cost very much. They help to illustrate points, especially if you're making history documentaries that might not have a lot of footage from the period. So what else can you show? So obviously networks like to show a bit of drama reconstruction. Drama reconstruction in a documentary leads to this horrible term, drama doc. Drama docs are an hour. They are at the more expensive end of documentary making, and they are similar to what I do. But we do that a little bit more. We don't have any of the documentary techniques. There's no archive, there's no talking heads. The whole thing is drama. So it's written by a drama writer. The guy who wrote that wrote Rev, the sitcom on BBC One. He also wrote Ambassadors. We have drama directors, drama producers. We have around about 100 people working on it, and all of them, with the exception of 2 people, come from the drama world. So they only work on dramas, and they're hired days or weeks at a time, and they're really not interested in the factual story part of it. Now, that's great because we want them to help us hold the audience. We don't want to spend £2 million on a show that no one's going to come and watch. So, it's a big reputational piece, it's a big landmark show, creates a splash on the network. You want to make sure that the audience stay there, or you attract them in the first place and they stay there, and there are different ways of doing that. But the best way, the shortcut to all of that is go and get some drama people. Maybe some of you guys have an interest in the drama and the fictional side of things, maybe some of you more on the documentary, on the factual side of things, and I'm here to basically say you can blend the two together. That's what we do. And how do we do it? Well, of the 100 people who are the drama people, and then there's the 2 who are not, and that's me and the exec, the guy in charge. So the guy in charge is in charge of all of it. And he will go and find a drama writer. And the drama writer then, what normally happens in the drama world, they go off and read the book. And once you've read the book, then you have to option the book. And optioning the book is expensive and not always reliable because it's only one book. If you're telling the story of John's life, and John wrote a book, and that's fine because it's one subject and John's your subject and there's the book and off you go and that's great. But if you're telling the story of 9/11, then you've got 3,000 to 4,000 people and you can't have one book. That doesn't stop Hollywood. They will still just rely on their one book and off they'll go. And it's not always that reliable or reliable at all, I would say. So you have to find lots of sources, reliable sources. You have to go talk to the people that were there. And that's my job. I will help to get the idea over the line. I will say, well, you know what, the people that were there, they say this, this, and this. And they will say that actually that book's wrong, the one that everyone's been relying on. And the truth of it is that. And I will find sources tucked away in hidden archives. I will go and talk to the people that were there. I will ask people to tell me things they might never have spoken about before. When I did a film about the death of Princess Diana in the tunnel in Paris. The people that spoke to me had told me things that they hadn't really told other people. There are people who told me information about this, and they'd never told anybody in their life. People have different reasons for not saying things. Sometimes you're talking to veterans about D-Day and World War II battles. They don't want to tell you anything because they're men of a certain age, never told anybody anything about anything. Other times, they might not tell you stuff because they're worried legally or they're worried emotionally. Sometimes they want to tell you stuff because they want to get it off their chest. It's a good thing to be a good listener, to listen to people's stories, because frankly, you're in the study, you're in the pursuit of taking those stories and passing them on to other people. We are in a business that is not an end in its own right. You know, the media, glorious as we all are, is actually superseded by something much bigger and better than us, all of us, which is the story and people's stories. You're telling people's stories, then it pays to listen to what those stories are and to try and get those stories right, especially if you're in the business of telling true stories, factual stories, which is what I do. So my job is to go and listen to people, hear their stories, and then I skip merrily back to the UK and I give it all to the drama writer who concocts a different version and we all have to start again. It's not quite like that. We're all one big happy team. But so I'm coming at it from a factual perspective. The drama writer, he's got a job of finding an audience and holding them for 90 minutes. He's got his perspective, she has her perspective. And the two of us sometimes have to work it out together. And we're overseen by the exec who will say, right, well, you know what, we can't have that, but we can have this. And so we have an obstacle and a difficulty immediately, as some of you may have seen or realised, which is in our fictional film that we're talking about at the moment, the film about John's life. The fabulous thing about John's life is that John lived it. That's terrific, and we're all enjoying it so far. The tricky thing for us in making a factual drama about it is that John's life has gone on for a few years, and we only have 90 minutes. So how are we going to get around that? Well, there's a couple of ways. You can either just focus in on a little bit of John's life and just tell that bit. Or if you want to tell more of a biopic, for example, Walk the Line, Johnny Cash biopic. Johnny Cash, that film was made, I forget, I'm not sure the details, but Johnny Cash was what, in his 50s and 60s? You can't tell 50 or 60 years in a one-off film, so what are you going to do? In that instance, they didn't zero in on one bit. They chose a sample from across his life and little bits here and there. So that's great. So you just dive into bits of his life. But you still got to make a story, an overarching arc, trajectory. Start here, keeps going, holds the audience, comes to the end. Everybody goes home happy. They stay to the credits. They had a story. You've got to leave some events out. You're shortening the story, telescoping things. So you're taking some stuff out, and then and occasionally you might want to move things around. You want to keep the sentiment or the accuracy of the story you're telling, but you do have to work within television, and you have to make the story fit. So you have to squeeze some things around, and then that leads you to those terrible cards at the front that we all hate. Those cards that say things like, this is a true story, brilliant, that's how we got the money. That card, what that card really means, there's the secrets behind what we're really doing. That card says, this is a true story. What that really means is, we got millions of dollars from around the world to invest in this film because we told everybody it's true, and everybody loves a true story. That's great. The next card is for the lawyers. That one says, yeah, when we said it's true, what we really meant was we invented some of it. So it's true in those places where you and we want it to be true, and those places where you think it's true, but not really, and we couldn't really make it up, but so we just get out of jail free with a card at the front that says, this is, in places we made up some scenes. And then there's the card at the end, which kind of adds to the confusion, and that basically says, yeah, all right, we did make up some stuff, but some of it, frankly, the whole thing is genuinely reliable. That card says it's based on interviews with people that were there, and again, that bits me. And what we're trying to do is basically tell the audience that this is by and large a true story, but it's a true story for television, so we've had to move some things around in order to make the story work. But the essence of what you're seeing is true. There is some jiggery-pokery, license we call it, dramatic license. And so the question then arises, what can you say that's true? Which bits can you move around? In looking at John's life, in our film about John's life, it turned out that John had amazing adventures and escapades and terrific things, and that's great. And in the middle, there was a little bit that we didn't really like so much. So you know what, we'll make up something fantastic and shovel that in there. Well, that's not something we want to do, because that is getting away from the sentiment of the accuracy. That's suggesting things that didn't happen. So a better way is just to skip that bit. And there are other ways of managing working with the truth. It's tricky to work with the truth. If you speak to the D-Day soldiers, as I mentioned before, and they are soldiers on a battlefield, whether D-Day 70 years ago or whether in Iraq and Afghanistan in recent years. 6 soldiers. They will have 6 different stories. One was blown up, one doesn't remember this, one says it was all fine, and yet they got out the same truck together. They're standing next to each other and they got 6 different stories. Well, you only got one film, and which story are you going to tell? Well, what you have to do is speak to all of them and to understand why they've got different stories and work out a solution between them together. So a while back, working on GameChangers, I went to go and meet Jack Thompson, who's one of our 2 protagonists. This film is a double header, 2 people, 2 heroes. Sam Houser, leading Rockstar Games that makes Grand Theft Auto, and a protester, Jack Thompson. I went to go and meet Jack. I spoke to him lots of times on the phone, hours and hours and hours on the phone. Build up his confidence, understand his story, and then go out and meet him. He's a lawyer in Miami, and he wants to say some things, and he's concerned about some others, and so you spend some time with him. And he told me a story, and he said, you know what, I was getting behind the campaign against Grand Theft Auto and some of these video games. He said, and I sat having dinner at a big dinner event, and there was a little old lady there, sitting there, and twin set and pearls, and she said, oh, you're Jack, you work against the video games? And he said, yes. And she said, well, you know what, Jack? Fuck them. Go tell them to fuck themselves, and I wish you every luck with everything you do. And Jack was a little taken aback by that, but he laughed, and he told me the story, and then my job is then to go and give that story to the writers. So I spoke to Jack, and Jack told me that story. I went and gave that story to the writers, and Jack is very proud of his Christian heritage. And so we've got lots of things to do. Every word and every scene, we argue back and forth, we work it out as a team as to what we can say in our script. And we want to say lots of things with every one word. So we want to, and with pictures too. We want to show that Jack is Christian. We want to show that Jack has these strong views. We want to show that Jack is surrounded by other people who say some of these surprising things to him. So how do we show that in a scene? And this is the scene that we came up with.
Jack.
Oh, hello, Sally. How are you?
I hear you're campaigning against the people who make those violent video games.
That's right, I am.
Good for you. Go get him, Jack. They're fucking with our kids. Fuck these people. Fuck them.
Well, I certainly intend to. Thank you.
Can I make a donation?
Oh, no need. Just send us your prayers. I'll be on 60 Minutes tonight.
I'll watch you. I'll pray for you. And I'll send them some hate mail.
God bless you.
That's Jack. Well, that's Bill Paxton playing Jack. The reason why it's important to listen to people and to get things right is that then you have to go back and call Jack and say, you know what, Jack, you told me the story about the abusive old lady, and it was one lady, and you told me the things about your church. Yeah, well, we put those two together. You said that the little old lady was at a dinner. Well, we put the little old lady outside the church. Is that all right? And at first, Jack will have his own views about that. So when we're making our film about John, I'm going to have to ring up John. I'm going to say, John, you know what, you told me this, this, and this, and we've changed it entirely. You okay with that? And John's going to be, no, John's going to say, well, do I have a veto? And we're going to say, you do, because we are working with you and we need to listen to you and work with you. So we want to take your views on board. We're not going to, it's easy for us to say, well, no, of course you don't, because we're shooting it and we're editing it, but good luck with it. We'll let you know when it comes out. But that's not what we're in the business of doing. The values of the BBC that we talk about in terms of integrity and accuracy and standards aren't just buzzwords, they mean things. They mean things to me personally and to lots of people at the BBC, and John too. So I will go to John and I will say, you know what, you're a bit concerned about that, so this is the script, this is how we're going to show it, this is what we're going to do. And John will say, well, okay, not really sure about that, I'll live with that if you could just take this bit out, and that's what we'll do.
If I violently object, what will you do?
Take a step back, make sure I'm out of reach. If you violently object, you don't like it, then my integrity is to you rather than the show in the BBC. So my job then is to heavily impress upon the writer and the exec and everybody else as to why this piece shouldn't be in the film. And 9 times out of 10 they listen, because they share the same set of values. And that's the process I went through with Jack. And I said to Jack, you know what, that story you told me, yeah, and your church is very important to you. Well, we've taken that scene and we've set it in your church. Is that all right? And Jack had a few concerns, and eventually we won him over. And then so a couple of weeks ago, we finished the film. I was able to go back out to Miami and sit in Jack's front room and go and show him the film and the whole thing. And as he picked me up from the airport, he said, you know what, I'm so proud of this that I've invited lots of my friends from church, including a wide range of little old ladies. So now I find myself sitting in Jack's front room with a load of some little old ladies from the church who are now unwittingly being represented in this way. But I need to keep Jack on board and everybody else on board. So you have to explain to them what you're doing and why you're doing it, and so forth. Doing that is one thing with people who don't have much experience in the media, and you know that they don't, and so you're looking after them. You have to be aware that people that you're sticking in a multi-million-pound movie, or when you're doing a radio vox pop on the street. I used to do, when I did radio vox pops on the street, and you're standing there, it's just you and a microphone on a rainy day, and you're asking somebody these questions, and they adjust their hair, make sure they look all right. It's a microphone, it's radio, no one can see you. But that's because they just don't know, and so nor do they know that they know they're being recorded, but they might not actually register that. It's the same way as people know they're actually sending tweets out to the universe, but they don't register that actually might be defamatory. And so in looking after people who don't have much exposure to the media, that's one way of operating. There are other people who operate in other ways. So for example, another show that I did, I was making a documentary about space. We were making space documentaries, and we wanted to make a drama about Apollo 11, the first manned mission to land on the moon. And it was my job to track down the crew and speak to them, as I would normally do. The trouble with that is that those astronauts have been speaking to the media for 40 years, and they hate speaking to the media. Neil Armstrong, they hadn't given an interview in 20 years. There was a film called In the Shadow of the Moon, he didn't do an interview for that, or a book called Moonwalking, Moondust, he didn't do an interview for that. And they gave me a year, and I said, well, I'm going to go and do it. I'm going to get the interview with Neil Armstrong. And I want to understand why he didn't like giving interviews, and found out why he didn't like doing it. Sent him some letters, and more emails, and eventually he agreed to meet. We went, had a drink with him in a bar, and by that point, we weren't just doing the documentary, we were making a film too. And we said to him, like, yeah, we want to interview you for our documentary. And he said, well, all right, I'll think about the documentary, but I just I'm glad you're not doing a drama. And we were like, God, no, we wouldn't be thinking of that. And so we did the interview. He arranged to finally do the interview, which was useful because we were making the drama as well at the same time. So we need to get some questions from him that will help with the drama. In that instance, in that instance, we weren't honest with him, because I took the view that he was making a choice as to whether he was going to be involved with this and not involved with that, and that he'd taken the view he wasn't going to do any interview for 20 years. Whereas I took the view that that wasn't entirely his choice, that he was a public figure who went on a public mission funded by public money, and that the reason that they took their names off the patch, so the Apollo 11 patch doesn't have astronauts' names on it, very unusual in that respect, was because he went there in the name of all mankind. Well, I thought that I belonged to mankind just as much as everybody else, and that he had a duty to tell me and everybody else, at least once in 10 years, what it was like. And I put that to him. And he sort of, and so the research for that interview informed other things that we were doing. He didn't really know about the drama, but what we wanted to secretly do was find some accurate information to make sure the drama we were telling was slightly more accurate than it had previously been. And in my mind, that was looking after him too, because I wasn't asking him questions, tell me about your personal life and your family, because we're going to shovel that in as well. So it was, there was a notion of integrity there that we were trying to look after him. At the same time, I was also writing a book about landing on the moon, and he knew about that. And he doesn't speak about anything, he's very quiet. So now I've gone to pick him up in a taxi from his hotel, and as you know, when you're interviewing somebody, you don't want to ask them the questions over lunch the day before, because you want the questions to be fresh when you ask them on camera. That way the answers will be fresh and they'll be crisp. If you ask them on the way to the interview those questions, by the time you interview them, they'll be like, yeah, you remember that answer I gave you only a few minutes ago? It was the same answer. So that's not what you want. So I'm in the back of the taxi. He doesn't speak about anything. He doesn't answer. I can't ask him questions about that we're going to interview him. I can't ask him about the drama because he doesn't really know about it. Yeah, and I can't ask him about the book because that's the same questions as the interview. So what do you talk about when you're stuck with Neil Armstrong in the back of a taxi and there's nothing to talk about? Unfortunately, he was interested in Roman ruins, and we happened to be passing some Roman ruins, and I would never be more grateful for a pile of Roman ruins than that occasion. And then we interviewed him, then we dropped him back at the hotel, and he just wanted to walk down the street. So he got out of the taxi and he just walked down the street, and there were a couple of backpackers just in front of him. And they didn't really care. They were like, they didn't know. They looked around, they saw a little old man, and they carried on. And I like that. I like the fact that that everyone has a story. You can look around, you see a little old man, you don't know who it is, and they have stories to tell. And I think that the value in the media is to find stories and to be the first person to find a story and to have the best views of it or the best interpretation of it that is going to make someone else sit up and listen. And when they sit up and listen, that's an audience, and pretty much that's what you're after. Let me show you my last clip. 5.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
4.
To get there and return successfully before 1970 is the primary objective of NASA's Project Apollo.
3.
A project that represents the greatest, most intricate mobilization of government, science, and industry ever attempted outside of war.
2. Ignition sequence start. 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
Here we got a roll program.
Apollo 11 aborts and falls into the ocean. Well, then, yeah, sure, I'd love to give it another shot, but if we fly this one as planned, I think that's going to be it for me.
You're telling me you don't want to walk on the moon?
I'm happy to leave that to the others.
Edwin Aldrin.
Buzz. Everyone calls me Buzz.
Buzz isn't the easiest person to get along with.
Neil, abort! Hit abort!
Something you want to say to me, Buzz?
Why didn't you abort?
It was a simulation.
That's not an excuse.
One of you gentlemen is going to be the first man to set foot on the lunar surface.
We haven't really decided on that issue yet.
You want to be the first to... You offering or asking? Actually, I'm just cutting through the crap. You know what my biggest problem is? I'm always trying to remind myself how it was up there.
Everyone's in agreement that our first shot at landing is 11. Are you okay with that?
I'll take whatever's going. Commander of the first moon landing? It's not something I turned down. They heard the alarm. I know what we would have done in that situation.
So, what exactly did we learn from all of that?
That we are on our own up there. There is a chance that I won't be able to come back.
Why not?
Well, because nobody's ever done this before. things can go wrong.
Houston, this is Neil, radio check. Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Any rocks? Damn, I knew we went for something.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Well, that pretty much takes us to a half hour. So there's more to go, but what are your questions?
Get on another 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
What a difference between factual drama and drama doc?
Yeah, that was in our conversation before. Yeah. So I think we talked a little bit about that at the beginning, but just to recap on that, I think that so these are factual dramas. You'll see some of the techniques that we have there. So we got we have our actors speaking the words, the genuine audio, and that's a little bit of blurring the lines between factual and drama, but we do less of that. And we're proud of that fact, we do less of that sort of stuff than Hollywood. Hollywood at the moment is into factual dramas with 12 Years a Slave and Rush, and we talked about Walk the Line before, and there are Ray is another one, but there are plenty of them around. And so for us, factual drama is purely drama with some of these little techniques going on, and they are 90-minute movies for television. We make them within the BBC, we get BBC money, and we get money from elsewhere in order to sell them to American networks and others. So which stories make factual dramas? A tiny, tiny, tiny number. For a start, the story has to be summed up in one word. When you're saying you're making a film about one word or one single phrase, if the person you're talking to, your mum or friend or whoever it is, doesn't know instantly the story you're telling through that one word or that one phrase, it isn't going to make a factual drama. So, Landing on the Moon, Grand Theft Auto, Blackbeard the Pirate, Princess Diana, you know exactly what those are about. And that's what networks are looking for, because that's where the money is. It's, I had a producer friend who told me, it's not show friends, it's show business for a reason. And really that's the business that we're all in, is audience, and audience translates into dollars. So yeah.
Sit down, Dan.
Yeah.
Right. Now you've been very coy. Perhaps you had a barrage of writs from Rockstar Productions, didn't you?
We did. You're right. And well, not a barrage. We had the one, yeah. And we.
They make Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah. So this is as I say, a double-header film. It's two heroes, so we have to tell two stories. We have to talk to two people. I told you a bit about Jack Thompson. The other person is Sam Hauser, and the people around him at Rockstar Games. And of course I want to talk to them just as much as I want to talk to Jack. They were less keen to talk to me for various reasons, and I persisted, but that was the decision that they made.
They might still sue you.
Well, before the program went out, they took legal proceedings against us, which is not an ideal situation to be in. Legal proceedings are inevitably going to be
What did they want,
expensive.
An injunction?
No, they didn't want an injunction. They brought about legal proceedings with regard to a claim for alleged trademark infringement. Some of our surrounding publicity material was stuff they took offence to, and that has yet to be fully resolved. But yeah, who knows?
What did their review say on Twitter?
When halfway through, when the show was going out, Rockstar took to Twitter and said, at BBC, was Basil Brush busy? What is this random, total, made-up bollocks? Which we were very grateful for the fact that they were clearly watching the show.
So from the beginning, you had lawyers involved, BBC's Programme Legal Advice team, right from day one?
So I was working on the show for 2 years, and a large part of that's full-time. That's quite long, even for a big show like this. a large part of my job, once I've gone off and found the people and found the stories, and then go and tell the writer, and we stick it in the script, and then the lawyers will look at it, and the BBC's, the people at the BBC in charge of our ethics and how we tell a story and so forth, they are the editorial policy people. They want to look at it too. And they will say, well, how you're saying that? How can you possibly say that? And that's my job then to say, well, we can say that because of this, and it's supported by that, and I've got another 6 sources for here. So as John said, I started out in BBC News, so the understanding of the value of additional sources is important. Understanding of broadcast law, risk, defamatory risk, libel, these things are important too. What can you say? How far can you push it? When you don't have the facts, how much drama can you push in there? And
so you had lawyers and Ed Poll calling
throughout. We would meet the lawyers every few weeks, and we would argue for hours over individual words. You'd get so in a show like Grand Theft Auto, where the language is quite direct and explicit and fruity, then you get all manner of well-to-do people within the BBC arguing about a wide selection of words they wouldn't normally say in their daytime.
How many fucks were you allowed in an hour and a half?
Well, we couldn't have a fuck in the first 5 minutes, right. And the N-word had to go. We had that in nigger. Yeah, that had to go.
Any C words?
There were 1 or 2. Are they still in there? I was kind of forget.
I once saw Armando Iannucci, who made In the Thick of It, say that he was allowed 4 F words in the thick of it. He was only allowed a C word on a cake.
Yeah, right.
On a cake. Well, now Glendale Medica, who was the BBC's guru for law, once told me, he said, look, you journalists are all right. It's the drama people. He said, they just make it up. Then we have to watch. He has a point that drama is, by definition, fiction, and that factual drama, therefore, is the most complicated area potentially within within the drama genre, because often you're dealing with people that are still alive. One thing that, that makes me a little cross sometimes, is that you'll get producers and directors who'll say, well, we're making that thing about World War I, so that doesn't matter so much. So at what point does John's life not matter? If the people at the back row, if you're making a film about prehistoric family in a cave in France, does their life matter? Well, if you get something slightly wrong, well, not really, because you're going to get everything wrong, because we don't know anything about that family. We don't know their name, we don't know what language they spoke, if they spoke a language. You're going to get a lot of stuff wrong. Does that matter? Well, not really. If you're the people on the back row making a film, but you're making the film about John, does it matter if you get that stuff wrong? Yeah, a lot, because John's watching it, and so's John's friends and family, and you owe it to John. If they're dead, you can libel them.
The law is that if someone's dead, then you can. Then it's not that it's okay to libel them. The law is that they can't. Clearly they can't. They're dead, but nor can their estate sue you. So you are on safer ground. But morally, you still, and this is the point, you still owe it to them. Is it okay to say anything you want because they're dead? Well, about who? What, about the prehistoric people? Possibly, because they lived thousands of years ago. What about Battle of Britain pilots killed in the defence of their country, and you will say anything you can about them? That's not really on either. So I take the view that we should be looking out for people's interests as much as you can, whether they're dead or alive.
How much of a tension is there between the factual and the drama? How much do the lobbyies say, oh come on, let's say it?
That's a really good question.
I work at
it. At the end of the day, the outcome is not much tension, because there can only be one script. So someone has got to make a decision, write something down, and that's going to be the writer, by definition. And that's great. So the writer can either, and the writer will take a view. They're working in a team, and at that point, can't change the words in the script. I can explain to the writer that's a very bold and isolating decision they've just made to stick that line in that script with their name on it. And some.
Have you ever done a wobbly? Have you ever thrown your toys out the pram? Said, look, we cannot say that. If you say that, I'm out.
I never say I'm out, but what I do say is that the implication is they're out. That it's not my problem; it's their script. So the suggestion is you can say that, and here is the shitstorm that will come upon you if you persist with it. And
does that work?
Every time. Not always.
Storms.
Well, they're not like, we're all in it together. We're a joint team, and what we're trying to achieve is something that everyone can stand by and be proud of. That when by the time the show goes out, after it's been written, and the lawyers looked at it, and editorial policy, and I've gone and I've looked at it as closely as I can, and it's been edited, and the execs from all the different networks have had their say as well. By that point, everyone is full square behind the finished product, and we're proud of them. They take a long time.
Where did the story for Game Changer come from?
So there was a treatment written, an outline written based on a book that was floating around at the time, and that would float around within the BBC. Circumstances regarding the book have changed since then, but because for a start you can't base a show on a book, because TV and books are very different, and so you can only tell a show that's very, very specific and that works for you. So disregarding the book, we came up with our own storyline, our own structures, and based on our own research.
Off the author?
No.
Did you pay the author any fee at all?
The relationship between the BBC and the author is privileged and subject to contract.
So that's a polite way to say you didn't give him any money.
No. That's not that. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm saying something else. I'm saying that the relationship between the BBC and the author is something that it remains confidential between the BBC and the author.
At what stage did you come aboard on this project?
So when a treatment comes to me saying someone thinks that Grand Theft Auto is a good idea, why don't we tell this whole story? That comes from a factual person, because I work within factual. But it comes to me because I have a drama sort of background a little bit. And I will say, well, you can't tell everything. Actually, what you should tell is that bit. And then I'll write a treatment based on that bit and explain to people why that's a good bit to
So where
follow.
did you find out about this man, Jack, from?
Precisely from, well, as I say, it was a treatment that came to me, written by somebody else.
He was already part of the story.
And he was already part of the story.
If you'd known the hassle you were going to have over 2 years, would you have taken it off?
Oh, every time, yeah. No, I enjoy that.
All journalists, you like a good fight.
Yeah. Well, it's less the fight. It's more the tenacity and to get to the root of the story. It's not as adversarial as that. It's more you're looking to. It's more constructive. You're looking to find the pieces and put them together and tell a cracking yarn. That's what you want to do.
What did you take out at the end? What did you say? Oh no, we won't get away with that. We're amongst friends here.
Apart from the camera and the two microphones we're wearing.
Amongst friends. Electronic friends.
Yeah. Stuff that didn't make it in.
Yeah. Which is?
That.
That's all you're going to tell me. Did Rockstar Media do your marketing for you?
It did give the show a bit more exposure, a little bit at the end. It depends how much value one places on a few headlines associated with a trademark infringement claim 6 weeks before the show goes out. I mean, there wasn't a huge amount of exposure associated with that. We have our own marketing campaign. There was a lot of press coverage around the world in the gaming press and in the regular press, and it didn't do much either way, really. It was.
What audience did you get on the night?
On the night we got
catch up, obviously.
Yeah, well, on the night it was around about 1 million, and then catch up is taking it closer to 2 million.
So £1 per person.
Yeah, which is obviously it's nice to have a bigger audience, and it would have been even better had we had a bigger audience than that. However, those shows are as a reputational piece. What that means is the BBC saying, look, when we pull all the stops out, this is what we can do. Okay, that's a brilliant question, and it's a complicated question, and that lies at the root of all that we do. So just to summarise the question for those who might have missed it, in telling our film about John, and we've got John's CV and the books that John has written, all of which are not too difficult to get. And so you know what? We're going to show John getting up in the morning and he yodels out the window, and then you know what? He dances around, he has an operatic moment, and then he has a massive fight with the nearest and dearest, and all of which he hasn't mentioned in his CV and book. And the drama person could say, well, that's fine, we'll chuck all that stuff in because that's just daily life. And I want to make the point that actually we're getting beneath the skin of someone. So Rob's question was about getting beneath the skin of people, the integrity of people. What is John like as a person? Because that is what we are portraying in the movie. What person are we actually showing here? That's why I go out to go meet these people and spend time with them, to understand them as a person, so I can advise the writer. And like I say, that person would never say this. They would never operate in that way. Sometimes you don't get it because the people don't want to speak to you, and so that's very hard. Sometimes you do find out plenty of information, but you can't show it because it's defamatory and libelous. So
how do you research? You go and see and talk to somebody. Do you actually sit there with a piece of notepad, or do you actually just talk and then go somewhere afterwards and write it up?
So the other night, 2 nights ago, I had dinner with Roger Christian, who's a lovely man, and he's a set designer. He's the man who, in the original Oliver Twist film, he made Fagin's box. You open that box with the jewels in it. He also then made the lightsaber. We had dinner the other night, he had a lightsaber with him, and holding the lightsaber, was brilliant. And I'd spoken to him lots and lots of times on the phone about various things, and I make notes at the time while I was on the phone. But there and then, because we're having dinner in a restaurant, but I still have a notepad, and I'll still get the notepad out, move everything aside, and write down what he's saying. He knows what he's telling me is on the record, and he's likely to be used in this film, because he can see me writing it down. Excuse me, it's his choice, what he wants to say, and what anybody wants to say, because I'm being honest.
I asked that question. You not find that having a notepad acts as a constrict? That actually you're probably better just remembering it and going to the toilet and writing it down?
No, because it acts as a lens. Because as you're writing stuff down, you can't write every last word that they say consistently. What you want to write down is the emotion that they're getting across, and they're telling you a story, and they're saying, oh yeah, and it was this, and it was that, and the other, and in 101 details. And you might not get the 100th detail, but you might get the energy and the emotion, and it was important to them, the story they're telling, because of X. And so you're distilling stuff down because that is the stuff the writer is going to be looking for, because they're not going to use the same 100 words. They want to know, what is the emotion, back to Rob's question, what's the integrity, what's the thing at the heart of this person, or at the heart of their story that you're trying to catch. Everyone in this room will have, I'm hoping or believing, that has an interest in media in some way or other, and maybe pursue it as a career. And whatever you do, whether you're in media management, or whether you're looking to make films, or whether you're looking in print or photography or design or whatever it is, the thing that will guarantee you more success than maybe the next person is your ideas. Your ideas being your ideas, your authenticity, your integrity. Your ideas are bigger and better and more of them maybe than other people. That's what marks you out. So when me or anybody else is in the office in the BBC, no one's sort of saying, all right, here's a load of ideas, and you go away and tell, you're paid to come up with ideas and go and tell other people, and then to so believe in the idea that you're pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, because that's what the media is. It's a pushy industry. You're pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, and explaining it to all those people who are not as brilliant.
5 ideas before breakfast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you're in a second. Yeah. And if you've ever worked on a daily show, you have a morning meeting at 8 or 8:30. And you have 5 ideas, or else you're dead.
Yeah. So to answer your question, there's nothing I enjoy more than having my own ideas. Sometimes an idea might float in my direction because that's the job I do, and so if it's a drama idea, I will shove it my way, and that's what happened in this case. But no, it's brilliant. Have your own ideas. That's a good question as well. A lot. So
who was the target for Game Changer?
The target audience for the Game Changer in the UK is only one part of the equation, because the money from the UK is only one part of the equation. You're looking to get money from not just the UK, but because of the cost of the show, you need to get money from elsewhere, from America, for example. Who are the target audience in America? Well, they are the audiences of the channels that will pay for this. Who are the channels that will pay for this? Channels like National Geographic, History, Discovery. Who are their target audiences? Men, often blue-collar men of a certain age.
So intelligent nerds for that?
Say again?
Nerds? Who's your audience?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that, the audience for those networks, they are blue-collar, they're men of a certain age, they are, and they're not just nerds, they're not, because that's a tiny category. We're not in that market for tiny categories. We want to catch as broad an audience as we can. So the US networks have their audience. The BBC audience is a different audience. You know, it's older. The BBC Two audience is older than that. It's
Did you
more
make
mixed
only
than
one
that.
version?
That's a good question, yeah. Do we make only one version? In this case, no, I don't think we did. And I was, before the BBC, I was 10 years at a little independent company. And we would make, so that Moonshot show, we made that there. And we would make 6 versions. We've got 6 networks, you make 6 versions. They all want a different version. The Germans want more nudity, the Americans just want sharks in it, and the French don't care as long as there's some art somewhere down the line, and the BBC just want it yesterday. And so you have to make a version for everybody, and that's very difficult for a little business to do, because that's a long time to cut different things, and you've got to shoot different stuff and make sure you've got enough time and input for everyone. So the question essentially, so big shows in the past, Kathy Come Home as an example, are the big hitting social
Warriors.
Yeah, Warriors that are making a point and have something to say. How can that single thought be said if you've got 6 different paymasters all asking you to say different things?
Do they get squeezed out by the international paymasters?
Yeah, and I think that the answer lies in the heart of the story that you've chosen to tell in the first place. So if you're, and it'd be lovely if we could make more stuff like that had a social punch, particularly in the UK. But as I said a second ago, we've got to be mindful of other markets and territories who are also putting money in, and they might not necessarily want that. And
but with Apollo 11, for example, you were choosing the subject there which had an international appeal. That's one of the things you have to do.
Well, they all have international appeal, yeah. Grand Theft Auto played around the world. So Princess...
But you have to hire stars as well. You hired Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah.
What did you pay him?
Well, that's something I'm not going to tell you.
Okay. But what was the point of the stars? Why did you hire the stars?
We can get the stars. We hire the stars because we can. They want to do it. It's good for their reputation. They're not just making a frothy drama, which is the drama is stuff they will do for the rest of their career. And this is a drama. The difference with this is that it's got factual people working behind it, and it's offering something different. And so often, maybe in Daniel's case, it offers another string to their bow. Look what I can do. It's different to wizards at Hogwarts. On set, when I'm on set, then I will look at every single factual thing that I can. It's not always easy. So what are they saying in the script? What nuances are going on? What ad-libs are coming out? How's the wardrobe looking? I did a thing about 9/11. I sourced the costumes, the firemen going up the towers. We built a tower, we stuck a crashed plane in the middle of the tower. I got original FDNY fire uniforms from New York, from the company that makes them. We dressed up the extras, we shot it in Lithuania, we dressed up the Lithuanian extras in the fire uniforms. We had the Lithuanian fire brigade on standby because we had flames going all over the place, and the extras were dressed better than the real firemen, and everyone was looking at everybody else. And you look at the extras, they're dressed correctly, and off they go, and we shoot the scene, and terrific. Job done. The film comes out 6 months later. You get a call from a widow of one of a fireman in New York, and she's tearful, and she's on the phone, and she's saying, "Oh, you found out the story of my husband. Terrific. How did you do that?" And I'm saying, "Well, I didn't, I'm afraid." And she says, "Well, he was from ladder 6, and that's that number on his shoulder, and the helmet that went out had a red number 6 on the helmet. That identifies that unit and that man as him. So that's him, and I hadn't realised that a Lithuanian costume person had stuck a number on the front of their helmet, and they'd gone out and that had been shot in that way. And so that's quite a challenging situation to be in. And you just, for that or for all the other problems, there's no other route than just to be upfront and honest as to what happened.
Sorry. A 1-minute version of your career and how you would advise others to become like you.
The 1-minute version of the career starts off with the answer to the second question. It started when I went to university. I took part in the university radio station. Whether you have one here or whatever facilities that you have here, if you're not doing it yet, then fucking go and do it, because that's how you get started. Because to get anything on your CV, to find out if your heart's in, if you don't want to do the radio station or do the media stuff or whatever's going on here, if that's not in your heart already, then that's a thing that's worth listening to in yourself, because it's used because when you get out of here and you move on to other things, then you'll be looking, then you will live or die by your strength of ideas and your interest in the industry. And so
portfolio here, yeah.
If you're looking for an interest in the industry, and the industry is looking for that interest in you, then it's a good thing to have an interest in the industry. So I did university radio, I did hospital radio, anything I could to get myself onto a broadcast journalism course. I did a broadcast journalism course for 6 months. That then got me into, had a placement in a radio station. When I got the placement, I didn't go back to the course. I stayed in the placement. I got a job from the placement, local BBC radio. I did that for 3 years. I then worked in BBC News for 5 years. Then in TV Centre, and then left to join an independent TV company, and where we made these dramas, and then I wrote books to accompany the shows, and now I'm about to go freelance. From my perspective, something that we know to be false in someone else's life.